Hi everyone, welcome back to the Audit and Attestation class, Chapter 4. This is part 3 of General Procedure to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence. Remember to go through part 1 and part 2 because this one is in continuation of the same. So in this part 3, we'll be covering sampling technique, audit sampling approach, which includes statistical sampling approach as well as non-statistical sampling approach. In addition to that, we'll be covering type of statistical approach, which include attribute sampling and the variable, or you can say quantitative sampling technique. So let's dive into to understand more in detail about the sampling technique, part 3 of it.
So first we studied sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, 4.1. Then we jumped into journal audit procedure. Now we are moving to the sampling technique for the audit. Right? In journal audit procedure, we understand inquiry, inspection, observation, reperformance, confirmation, integrated audit, test of controls, test of detail, frequency. Right? Now we are jumping into the next topic, which is sampling technique. So far we discussed more or less about like risk assessment. We discussed more or less about planning. We discussed more or less about walkthrough and test of control. So when you need to jump into the test of detail, you all should know that how to select the sample. So for selection of the sample, there are certain sampling technique you should be aware of, right? And how those sampling techniques actually work, you all should be aware of being an auditor, right? Sampling technique. So there are two sampling approaches. One is statistical sampling approach. The other one is non-statistical sampling approach. Statistical sampling approach is use the sampling plan in such a manner that the law of probability can be used to make statement about the population. That means like generally it used like random selection or maybe like any statistical method, which is like probability of selecting the samples from the population, which is more of representative of the entire population. So generally statistical sampling techniques focus on selecting the sample from the entire population, which is the representative of the entire population. That is called statistical sampling approach, right? In very plain vanilla language, statistical sampling approach focus on selecting the sample from the entire population, which are the representative of the entire population. So there might be different methods we will be learning in detail, but high level, if you think about statistical sampling approach, is more of which is giving you the representative sample from the entire population. And what is non-statistical sampling? Which is not a statistical sampling, it's called non-statistical sampling, right? It can be based on professional judgment or based on value, right? So we'll be coming to that, how these two different approaches work and in which situation or in which area of the audit you are using statistical sampling and in which area of the audit you might be using non-statistical sampling. So there are two requirements that must be met for a statistical sampling plan. First is sample must be selected statistically. That can be from random table or can be any other statistical method. Sample result must be mathematically evaluated. So these two things need to be followed to consider any approach to be a statistical sampling approach. Non-statistical sampling approach, it can be based on the risk or it can be based on the value. For example, if you are testing, let's say, expenses. If you are testing expenses, let's say business development expenses. So you may say like, I would like to test each sample which is more than $10,000. Right? So you can give a threshold to the number, or that is also called key value item testing. So that is comes under the non-statistical sampling testing, because here you are not testing randomly. Here you are not testing by applying any mathematicals or other formula. Here you are straightforward testing all the item more than $10,000. Or maybe sometime you will test on a risk-based approach. Right? For example, if you see sales head, he do like a lot of business travel, and he put the business travel of his personal expenditure also. You might have identified. So you might, based on a risk that this person is doing cheating or this person is doing fraud, he is booking the personal travels into the company's book. So you may say, like, I wanted to see all the travel expenses booked by that individual on a risk-based approach, right? That is called non-statistical testing approach. Make sense?
Suppose
Yes, sir.
for monthly and quarterly controls, we do follow non-sampling, statistical sampling method, because no calculation or something is involved while selecting a particular month to test if it's a monthly or a quarterly control, right?
No, for monthly, quarterly, or you can say weekly, multiple times a day, or daily controls. For testing of control are majorly like testing the attribute. And then we use statistical sampling approach rather than non-statistical.
No, so basically if we want to test 2 months out of period for, so we are testing until July, Jan to July, 7 months, and then we have to select 2 months. So how do we select those 2 months?
First month from first 6 months and another 1 month from another 6 months.
That comes under
randomly.
statistical sampling.
No, randomly.
Okay.
Right.
The random is part of statistical sampling.
Yes, random is
Okay.
part of statistical testing.
Okay.
Right. So what are the benefit of statistical sampling? First one is design efficient sample. It helps in designing efficient sample. Second, it helps in measuring the sufficiency of audit evidence obtained. So it gives you sufficient number of sample to test. It evaluates the sampling result and allow the auditor to calculate the risk of reliance on sample for assessing the control risk, and it enables the auditor to make objective statement about the population because the sample selected based on statistical sampling is the representative of the entire population. And what is the disadvantage of statistical sampling is, in some case, the cost of performing statistical sampling may exceed the benefit to be derived. For example, let's say you are testing the purchases. So most of, let's say 90% of your purchases is coming from one party based on the agreement you guys have signed. That's your basic raw material. Let's say if you are testing any automobile equipment manufacturer, right? And the basic raw material, which is around like 80% of their purchases, is, let's say, aluminum. And for the aluminum purchase, they have an agreement with, let's say, any aluminum supplier company based on the agreement, and every time they receive. And 20% of their purchases are spread over like maybe 1,000 supplier. For someone is supplying rings, someone is supplying tubes, someone is supplying bolts, someone is supplying nuts, so on and so forth, right? In that manufacturing company. So if you go for a random selection and you test like 25 sample, 30 sample, 50 sample, it may not be that much effective. If you just test one agreement with the main party, which is coming 80% of your purchases. And for the rest of the 20%, if it is not material to the financial statement, you are not required to test those as well. Right? So this is like maybe disadvantage sometime in using statistical sampling. It is not cost effective. Make sense? So as an auditor, we need to apply professional judgment, which method is more relevant for the respective financial statement line item. Make sense?
Yeah. Say answer maybe in this disadvantage part. Okay, if the size of the company which we are auditing is very small, in that case also maybe the benefits will exceed, the cost. The cost will exceed the benefits.
Yes.
Right?
So we, as
Yes.
an auditor, we need to do a professional judgment to evaluate
Yes.
the cost effectiveness as well. But all our judgment should not be based purely on cost. Right? We need to do
Okay.
a balanced approach how much risk is being there and how much cost is there. If the cost is more than the risk covered, then probably we can ignore. But if the risk is high, then we cannot say it is expensive affair, we are not doing it.
Okay. Okay.
So 1 second. So next is type of statistical sampling. So two type of approach, statistical and non-statistical, right? So now we are coming in detail of the statistical testing approach. So first one is attribute sampling. Second is variable sampling, which is quantitative sampling. Attribute testing is generally we use for the test of control purpose. That means whether the respective transaction is authorized, whether the appropriate approval has been taken, whether the appropriate segregation duty was there, whether the authorization matrix has been followed, right? Those all comes under attribute. And variable testing or quantitative testing is majorly used for test of detail, where the objective is testing the value. For test of control, objective is testing the attribute, testing the controls, testing the authorization, approval, segregation of duty, authorization metrics, and all those things, right? Whereas test of detail objective is to gain the comfort over the number which is reflecting in the financial statement line item. So both of them have different prospective and different objective, right? When someone say what is the objective of test of control, is testing the control attributes. And what is the objective of test of detail? Testing the value which is reflecting in the financial statement, right? Make sense? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So statistical sampling is also being used for attribute sampling and for the variable sampling. Variable sampling is used for test of detail. Attribute sampling is used for test of control. Professional judgment involved in statistical sampling. So when you are planning to select the sample by using statistical sampling technique, what all things you need to be considerate of? First one is population, right? Population means size of the account balance, right? If it is, let's say, $1 million transactions, right? Or characteristics, is it purchase, is it sales, is it expenditure, is it assets, is it liability, right? And the possible error. So that is the population. You need to first identify what you are planning to test. If you're testing the inventory, then what all things comes under the inventory, like raw material, WIP, FG, stores, spares, right? Obsolete inventory, provision for inventory lying with third party. So those all things you need to club together to make it like this is my population which I need to test, right? Second thing you need to be considerate of sampling method. Are you testing controls or are you testing details, right? Are you testing attribute or are you testing variable? Those things also you need to keep in mind. So attribute sampling, discovery sampling, variable sampling method, we'll be coming to that in detail. What is attribute sampling, discovery sampling, and variable sampling method? But you need to define the method by which you are selecting the sample. First is the population. Second is the method which you need to apply on this population to select the sample, right? Third is selection technique, whether you are selecting randomly or you are selecting systematically. Fourth is error analysis. If there is an error identified, how do you analyze those errors? That also you need to clearly mention over here, right? Finding must be evaluated both quantitative and qualitative. The primary input into the auditor qualitative evaluation is the professional judgment and experience. That is the most important thing. These all things you need to be considerate and you need to apply professional judgment for selection of the samples.
Sir, in this error analysis, it's written quantitatively and it should be qualitatively.
Yes, both.
It's written mistyping है यहाँ पे शायद quantitatively दोनों जगह
दोनों
लिखा है.
क्वांटिटेटिव हुआ हुआ है.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
So
So
statistical
discovery sampling और variable sampling एक ही है?
sorry,
Discovery sampling और variable sampling method. This the point है basically.
no,
So discovery और variable same है?
no, not same, different method, but either you'll be using discovery or variable for the respective line item. You won't use both. So that's the reason or is being mentioned. Statistical sampling examples. First one is random number table. So there might be random sampling technique. You might have heard about this term, right? So there is a table like which generally like most of the audit firm use, and especially like big company, they have some like tools how to select randomly the different sample. Like for example, in EY, they give you based on like respective criteria when you use the sampling tools, yeah, it give you the numbers, right? It give you the numbers which they leave up to the professional judgment of the auditor how they need to select those number out of the population, right? But when I was working with PwC, they have a separate tool which give you specific line item according to the tool which you need to select and test based for the random selection. So different company may have different way of identification of random samples. So, but majorly all the company, all the CPA firm, they use the number of tables, respective random table to identify the number of population, and selecting the specific population, they further wants to extend it using of the random number table. This is actually a best technique to select the representative sample from the population. This strategy is to randomly select the individual dollar from the population and then audit the balance, transaction, and document, or you can say a logical unit, right? Random selection, what things you need to keep in mind for your exam purpose is the most effective tool which represent the sample from the entire population, right? This line, if you keep in mind, I'm sure you'll crack an exam. Second is probability proportionate to size. This is called PPS sampling techniques, right? This is more on dollar unit sampling, which is MUS, like in EY we called MUS techniques. So that's coming from the probability proportional to size technique, which focus on testing the high value line item majorly. So here, like after sending the notes to you in morning, I added an example also here. So maybe I'll send you the notes again. So probability proportionate to size is a sampling technique to test the dollar value, and it's majorly focused on the high value item. So PPS sampling give a logical unit with the larger recorded dollar amount, more opportunity to be selected than logical unit with the smaller recorded amount. So in PPS, advantage is the all key value item would be selected as a sample, so coverage is more, right? But disadvantage is that it will select more key value item, less non-key value item, so it may not be the 100% reflective of the population. Whereas random selection give you randomly from throughout the population, so it's being more representation of the overall population. Make sense? So we need to understand certain formulas also here. So how to calculate the PPS sampling. In PPS sampling, projecting the error rate. So you need to project the error rate for the PPS sampling plan, and you need to give that numbers in the respective tool to calculate the number of samples. How do you calculate the projected error rate? Is the error in sample. That means, for example, from the total population, you have selected 50 sample and you got into one sample as a wrong, right? So your error in one sample multiplied by the total population divided by the sample value is your total projected error. So we'll do the math, don't worry about it. We'll do the example on this. Second is, how do you calculate the sample size? Sample size is equal to population that is book value, multiply by the reliability factor. So don't worry, reliability factor will be given to you in exam. So you are not supposed to calculate the reliability factor, that will be given to you in exam. Tolerable error, that you can calculate sometime, or it may be given to you in exam. And then expected misstatement, which is tolerable error, that has also been given to you in assumption in your exam. So you are not supposed to calculate the tolerable error, reliability factor, or expected misstatement or population. These things are being given to you in your exam, but they will ask you to calculate the sample size, right? And then lastly, sampling unit. For example, here, like this type of question may come in your exam. Risk of incorrect acceptance is 1%, 5%, and 10%. And the reliability factor corresponding to that is 4.6, 3, and 2.3, right? So you have given, like, assume the tolerable error is 5%. Tolerable error is 5% means risk of incorrect acceptance is 5%,
3%.
right? If the risk of incorrect acceptance is 5%, then reliability factor will be 3, right? And the total population they have given you is 500,000, right? And the call of the question is calculate the sample size. How do you calculate the sample size? What is the formula? Population book value. How much is that? 500,000. Reliability factor is 3, right? 500,000 multiplied 3 is 150. 1,500,000 divided by tolerable error. How much is tolerable error? 5%, right? And expected misstatement is 0 given here, not given here. So what is the tolerable error? 5% of 500,000. So number of sample is 60, right? I just did the math for simplicity. 500,000 multiplied by 3 divided by 5% of 500,000. That is 60 number of sample you need to test. And what is the sampling unit for PPE? What is the sampling unit for PPE? Is population book value, that is 500,000 divided by sample size, right?
Divided by 60.
So here if you see $500 divided by 60 is equal to $833. So that is your sampling unit, right? So for PPS, how do you calculate which sample you need to test? Right now the question is which sample you will be selecting for testing purpose. So here let's say there are so many transactions given to you, like customer A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and total they are making, let's say 500,000. So each, like customer A have balance of let's say 5,000, B have 10,000, C have 20, 40, 3, 2, 5, 8, 1, 500, 9,000 or 6,000. Let's see. These are the book balances of the customer, right? And now what you need to do for PPS sampling, you need to accumulate the balance. So cumulative balance is 5,000, 5,000 plus 10,000, 15,000, 15,000 plus 20,000, 35, 35 plus 40, 75, so on and so forth. This is how you do cumulative value.
So
right?
cumulative value समझ नहीं आया. ये basically
Cumulative-
in book values सब in ledger of basically individual ledgers है, and then
Hmm.
cumulative amounts of all these parties.
Yes, yes. Make sense? Or
Yes, yes.
still need any clarification? So
Sir,
5,000.
So in this table, customer I is also selected and book value is just 1,000, but our sampling unit value is 8,833. I guess
Yeah,
it should be
I'm coming to that. No, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
So, so far it's clear what is customer, what is book value. That means how much is being receivable pending from that. And then cumulative is A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus G, so on and so forth. Right? Right? So far, so good.
Yes,
now,
sir.
how do you select which customer you need to test? Is based on sampling unit. So sampling unit says in the multiplication of 8,333, whatever is the customer coming, you will be selecting that customer as a sample. That means First one, you will look at only the cumulative balances. You will look at only the cumulative balance. Now, A, B, C or book value is not relevant now onward for selecting the sample. For selecting the sample, cumulative value is important. So 5,000 is less than 833. Right? Yes, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you will ignore. So you will not select A as a sample. But cumulative 15,000 is greater than 8,333, right?
Yes, sir.
So you will select B as a sample. Then in 15,000, you will be adding 8,333. That is 23,033. 23,033 is coming in C, right? So hence you are selecting C also as a sample. Then in 35,000, what is the cumulative value? You will be adding 833. That means 35,000 plus 8,033. How much is it? 43,000. 4333. 4333 comes under 75,000.
No.
Right? Hence you are selecting D also as a sample.
Okay.
Right? And then in 75,000, you will be adding 833. So that means 8333 should be your next number, which you will be selecting. And this is 78. So you will not be selecting this sample. Next one is 80,000. This is also below 83,000, right? Next is coming in 85,000 here. So that means you will be selecting G as a sample, right? F and E and F is not your sample. Your sample, next sample is G, right? And here it is 85,000. 85,000 plus 833, that means 93,033. So this is 93,000. So this is below the number. So you will be ignoring this. And 9333 is coming under 94,000. So you'll be selecting this sample. Right? And then in 94,000, you'll be adding 8,033. How much is that? 94 plus 8.
102,333.
Right? So that will come in 103,500. So this sample will be selected. So that's how the sample selection is being done in PPS.
Kamali clear nahi hua.
Tell me what is not clear.
Matlab you added 15 plus, let's start with customer B. So you added 15, 13. So you were saying ki, nahi, let's start with customer A. So you added 8K to 5K, which comes down to 13K. So आपने कहा क्योंकि वो 13K comes in between 10 and 15, तो इसलिए हम 15 samples select कर रहे हैं. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And then you go on adding 15 में 8. So if that falls between 20 and 35,
So,
that is
yeah. So
20 or 35 or below 35?
So for example, this 833 is your unit. So this 5,000 is below 833. Hence, this is not a sample, right? So this 15,000 is above 833. Hence, this is a sample. And then 15,000 plus 833 is 23,000. And this 35,000 is above 23,000. That's the reason this is a sample. Same way is the 75,000. 35,000 plus 833 is 43,000, right? So this 75,000 is above 43,000. Hence, this is a sample. Now 75,000 plus 833. How much is it? 83,300, right? These two are below 83,200. Hence, this is not a sample. Hence, this is.
So basically, we will be stopping the calculation till the amount we have reached the next level.
Yes. So this 85,000 is above 83,300. Hence, this is being selected as a sample. Make sense, Nimisha?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Correct. Everyone? Sanchit, Gurmehar, Kashish.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yes, sir.
बुक वैल्यू और क्यूमुलेटिव वैल्यू, मतलब हम बुक वैल्यू जैसे ऊपर तक पॉपुलेशन बुक वैल्यू था, वो सिर्फ हमने सैंपल यूनिट तक निकालने के लिए काम आएगा.
Yes.
ओके.
Right.
ठीक सर. तो बच्चा ये फिर रैंडम सैंपल से ज्यादा टाइम कंज्यूम होगा?
No, like people, like firms do have tools. Most
अच्छा,
of the firm have their own tools.
ओके। सो रैंडम सैम्पलिंग में जब हम बात कर रहे थे, सो उसमें मटेरियलिटी हम पहले सेट कर देंगे and उसके ऊपर की सारी वैल्यूज ही है वो पिक करेगा जो रैंडम नंबर सैंपल यूनिट
No,
देगा।
there are multiple factors like frequency, materiality, tolerable error, all those things you need to consider to reach at the number. And how do you spread those number over the population? It can be like professional judgment or it can be through systematic approach.
ओके,
Right. So now let's understand. Ouch. Still in typing.
सर ये एग्जांपल के साथ नोट्स एक बार रीशेयर कर दीजिएगा।
I'll send you this file. Advantage of PPS. The use of PPS is not depend on the estimates of the population standard deviation, right? Second is PPS automatically result in a stratified sampling. So stratified sampling will be learning in our next class. That is also come under the sampling technique. So for that, just keep on hold for the stratified sampling. But in the next class, hopefully you'll be learning what is stratified sampling. Third is PPS systematic selection automatically identify any item that is individually significant and its value exceed the sampling interval. So here the key things, advantage is it select almost all the key value item. So it will help you giving more coverage, right? That is the key advantage of PPS sampling. If the auditor expect no error, then PPS sampling will usually result in a similar sample size as a classical variable sampling technique will do. So we'll be learning in, about what is classical variable sampling technique as well. But if the tolerable error is negligible or close to nil, then variable sampling technique or PPS technique will give same samples. Next is PPS sampling is most appropriate when an auditor desire testing of material overstatement. When you expect like overstatement, like revenue is generally like the risk of overstatement of revenue. In that case of area, it is always good to use PPS technique, sampling technique rather than random sampling technique. So two main things you need to keep in mind. One is PPS sampling technique will give you more coverage. It will select more high value item and some representative item, right? Second thing is when the objective of testing is to validate the overstatement of any account balance or transaction, then it is more appropriate to use PPS sampling technique over the random sampling technique. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
तो एक क्वेश्चन है।
Yes, please.
So like when we will be doing PPS sampling, we will get a list of all the like data जहाँ revenue जो भी पूरा एक list हमारे पास client से मिलेगा। So इस केस में सर जैसे अगर list is of around about say 200 people, जैसे इस केस में भी।
Yes, yes.
So how shall we pick a starting point basically? Is it the first number only or any number from middle? Because there is a possibility like first 60 हम 60 samples पे रुक जाएंगे। तो उसके बाद अगर क्या पता वहाँ पे बड़ी amounts हो या materiality को hit हो।
नहीं, why do we stop?
60 samples because सर हमने जैसे ऊपर sample size तो 60 है ना इसमें।
Okay. No, yeah, that's a very good point. So here 60 sample will make sure it is coming from first to last. So how you have calculated the number of sample, it will be covering the entire population. So this math ensure that 60 sample when you are done, it will be coming from top to bottom, all the numbers.
Okay.
So
number in the form of ascending order or date wise?
It can be either way, professional judgment of.
Because if you see here, if a value of 1,03,500 would have been at the second number, so the entire sampling methodology would have been disturbed, no? क्योंकि यहाँ पे sequence से है ascending order में, then we are following that approach. It's easier to select samples.
No, this is like as of now it's customer wise. like when you have taken like customer wise balance out. So it maybe can be document number wise, it can be date wise.
Okay.
Mhm.
So अगर 1,03,500 सेकंड नंबर पे होता 15,000 की जगह पे होता
Mhm.
तो 1,03,500 तो आ ही जाता आपके स्कोप में.
Yes, yes.
बट 1,03,500 स्कोप में आ गया and then we plus it, it becomes 1,11,500 something, right?
Mhm.
So with 35,000 no हो जाता next sample.
No, no, no. So you're confusing between cumulative value and book value. So 1,03,500 will come only after
Okay,
all this
okay,
accumulation.
okay. हाँ हाँ ठीक. Yeah.
Right? Any doubt so far?
No, sir. So basically, before selecting the sample of 60, we will have to do this full calculation for all the population, and then
Yeah,
we will
that's how
select
you
the
reach
60.
to the number of sample. So that's a mathematical calculation here. Oh, sorry. That's a mathematical calculation over here. How to reach 60? This 60 will cover the entire population.
Okay, sir.
Right? Okay, so maybe we can take a pause here for today class, and in next class, like which will be our next Saturday, we'll be doing rest of the sampling techniques, and then we will jump into the new topic as well in the next class.
So there won't be class tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow we don't have class. You can do the practice of chapter 2 and you can read through these notes. Right?
Okay, sir. Okay.
So next class we'll be finishing sampling technique, and then half of the class will be investing in analytical procedure Saturday, and then Sunday we'll be finishing data analytics and external confirmation. So these three will be the target for next week.
Okay, sir.
Oh,
And in this, data analytics will be very important from the current year and next year exam, because that's something new they have added. So I'm sure like they will be testing a lot from it. And it will be a great learning for each one of you as well. I know some of you might have worked on data analytics, but most of you have not. So it will be important learning for you as well.
We will deep dive into this particular analytical things, or just
No, no, fortunately not. But I'll give you insight and experience and some examples to make you understand like the concept of data analytics.
Okay,
And we can do certain examples as well.
Okay.